Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. 500,000 years later, the Galactic Council faces humanity's vengeful return. The emergency session of the Galactic Council erupted into chaos as the holographic display showed the approaching fleet, massive vessels of unknown design cutting through space with impossible speed. "Counselors, please." Elder Taha slammed his ceremonial staff against the chamber floor, the ancient Dracian scales shimmering with stress-induced iridescence. "We must maintain order." Counselor Ju of the Mentor Collective leaned forward. "The vessels match no known configuration. They've already bypassed our outer defensive networks without triggering a single alarm." "Impossible," muttered Counselor Yun. "No technology could." "Honored counselors," interrupted a voice from the chamber entrance. All eyes turned to the unexpected visitor, a tall figure in sleek armor, face concealed behind an opaque helmet. "Perhaps I might provide insight into these unexpected guests." The chamber fell silent. Guards moved forward, their weapons raised, but Elder Taha waved them back, his 6 eyes narrowed as he studied the stranger. "How did you enter this chamber?" "This is a closed emergency session," Taha demanded, his voice echoing through the vast hall. The armored figure stepped forward, moving with unusual grace. "Your security systems are impressive, Elder Taha." "They were impressive 500,000 years ago, too." The words hung in the air. Counselor Duri, representative of the peaceful Lomei people, gasped softly. "500,000? You cannot mean." "I am here as a courtesy," the stranger continued. "The fleet approaching your space could have arrived without warning. We chose to announce ourselves." Counselor Zhu stood up, her delicate features hardened with suspicion. "Who are we?" "Identify yourself and your species immediately." The stranger's helmet tilted slightly. "You already know who we are, Counselor. Your body stress indicators betray you. Your species' collective memory is excellent." Taha's scales flashed a dangerous red. "Remove your helmet, or our guards will remove it for you." The chamber waited as the armored figure reached up slowly. With a soft hiss, the helmet detached. The face revealed was unmistakably human, yet somehow different. The eyes were larger, the skin tone had a subtle blue undertone, the bone structure more refined. Gasps filled the chamber. Some of the older counselors actually backed away from their seats. "My name is Shaun," the human said calmly. "I serve as first contact representative for the Terran Collective." "Impossible," Counselor Hyan whispered. "Humanity was dealt with." Shaun smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Yes, we were dealt with. An interesting phrase for the attempted genocide of 11 billion souls." The council chamber erupted again. Younger counselors looked confused, while the elders appeared increasingly agitated. Elder Taha slammed his staff repeatedly until quiet returned. "That is ancient history," Taha said carefully. "Whatever grievance you believe." "It is not belief, Elder," Shaun interrupted, his voice still calm but cutting like a blade. "It is recorded fact. Would you like me to play the council records from that day?" "We have them." 500,000 years earlier, the newly formed Galactic Council had indeed faced what they deemed an existential threat: humanity. The ambitious, unpredictable species had advanced from planetary travel to rudimentary interstellar capabilities in mere centuries, a pace that terrified the elder species. "They show no restraint," Council Elder Doan had declared during that fateful session. "They consume resources at an unsustainable rate, their governance is fractured, their temperament violent. They represent a clear and present danger to galactic stability." The vote was nearly unanimous. Humanity would be removed for the greater good. Shaun activated a small device on his wrist. The council's main display changed, now showing historical records, the actual council session where humanity's fate was decided. Many current counselors watched in horror as their predecessors calmly discussed the most efficient methods to eliminate the sentient species. "This cannot be real," whispered Duri, her luminescent skin paling. "It is real," Shaun replied. Through engineered solar flares and artificial tectonic destabilization, Earth was systematically rendered uninhabitable. Billions died in the initial catastrophes. The survivors, desperate and confused, evacuated in whatever vessels they could construct or commandeer. The display showed scenes of devastation, massive tsunamis, cities crumbling, people fleeing in terror as the sky burned. The remnant human fleet was then driven by Council warships toward a distant wormhole, believed to lead to an empty, resource-poor region of space from which they could never return. The younger counselors watched in stunned silence as the historical footage showed Council warships hurting damaged human vessels toward a swirling vortex in space. History recorded this as the necessary correction. The matter of humanity was considered resolved. Shaun's voice grew quieter, until now. "These records could be fabricated," Elder Taha said, but his voice lacked conviction. Counselor Zhu studied the human carefully. "If what you say is true, and I am not conceding it is, how have you returned?" "The wormhole collapsed. Our records confirm this." "Yes, it did collapse," Shaun agreed. "After we passed through. We emerged in a distant galaxy, harsh, unforgiving, without the resources your reports claimed." He smiled again, that same cold expression. "But we survived. We adapted. We evolved." "For revenge?" asked Counselor Hyun, unable to hide the fear in his voice. "For justice," Shaun corrected. "The fleet approaching your space carries representatives from every human colony, 52 worlds united by a single purpose. We have come to settle accounts." "You speak of justice, yet you threaten us with warships," Elder Taha said. "Not warships, Elder. Transport vessels. We come in strength because history taught us the consequence of weakness." Shaun's expression softened slightly. "We do not seek the destruction of the Council or its member species, even those who voted for our extinction." "Then what do you want?" Dewey asked. "Acknowledgement. Reparations. And most importantly, reform. The Council that ordered our destruction still exists in this very chamber. Its founding principles remain unchanged." Shaun looked around the room. "We return to ensure no other emerging species faces what we faced." Taha's scales shifted to a deep blue, a sign of deep concern among his kind. "The fleet, how many ships?" 1,736, one for each human vessel driven through the wormhole. "And their capabilities?" Counselor Zhu asked quietly. Shaun just looked at her. The silence was enough. "The matter will be discussed," Elder Taha finally said. "The Council will need time to verify your claims and consider an appropriate response." "Of course," Shaun said, replacing his helmet. "You have 3 standard days. Our fleet will hold position at the edge of the Tabex sector until then." As he turned to leave, Counselor Duri called out, "Shaun, the humans who survived, how many?" He paused at the doorway. "From Earth? Less than 10 million. 1 in 1,000. The helmet turned back toward the Council. "We remember each name of those who didn't. All 11 billion. As the human departed, the Council chamber remained silent for several long moments. "Is it true?" Counselor Duri finally asked. "Did we really do this?" Elder Taha didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the doorway where Shaun had disappeared. History, it seemed, had returned to collect its debt. The Council chamber fell silent as the helmeted figure reached up and disengaged the seal on their helmet. The face revealed belonged to a species not seen in Council space for 500,000 years, unmistakably human, yet subtly different. The skin had a golden undertone, the eyes were larger and more luminous, and the bone structure seemed both stronger and more refined. "My name is Commander Miho of the Wanderer Fleet," he announced, voice steady. I represent what remains of humanity. Councillor Kyung rose shakily to her feet. Impossible. The human species was relocated. The wormhole collapsed. Indeed it did, Miho replied. After we passed through, we emerged in a galaxy you had never mapped, harsh, unforgiving, but far beyond your reach. He activated a small device on his wrist. The chamber's central hologram shifted to show the journey of the human refugees. Years stretched into centuries as the survivors of Earth traveled through unknown space. We found a home, eventually, Miho continued. A dozen habitable worlds in a distant spiral arm. We rebuilt. We adapted. Both our bodies and our technology evolved to survive conditions you cannot imagine. The hologram showed glimpses of a civilization advancing at an astonishing rate, cities that merged with living ecosystems, vessels that seemed to exist partially in other dimensions, humans with subtle adaptations, enhanced skeletal structures, modified nervous systems, eyes that could perceive a wider spectrum. We became the wanderers. And through it all, we remembered. For 500 millennia, we preserved the memory of Earth, of the Council's betrayal, of the billions who never escaped. Miho's eyes swept across the assembled councillors. We have returned with a simple demand: those responsible for Earth's destruction will face justice. The council chamber remained silent, many members too shocked to respond. Elder Taha, recovering first, leaned forward on his ornate chair. Commander Miho, he said carefully, if what you claim is true, and I make no judgment on that yet, you speak of events from 500,000 years ago. None sitting here today participated in those decisions. Miho tilted his head slightly. Your species lives for thousands of years, Elder Taha. Some here were alive then, though perhaps not yet in positions of power. His gaze shifted to several of the older council members, who visibly tensed. More importantly, your institutions remain unchanged, the same council, the same charter, the same attitude toward emerging species. Young Councillor Duri stepped forward. Commander, I've reviewed the records you provided. If accurate, what happened to humanity was a terrible crime. But surely after 500,000 years, you cannot still seek vengeance. Not vengeance, Miho corrected. Justice. And protection for others who might face our fate. He tapped his wrist device again. The hologram expanded, showing scenes from the human journey after passing through the wormhole. The images were disturbing, desperate survivors huddled in failing ships, fighting over dwindling supplies, children born in space who never knew Earth, their bodies already showing signs of adaptation to low gravity. The wormhole did not lead to the empty void your ancestors promised, Miho explained. It led to what we now call the Dark Reach, a region between galactic arms with few stars and fewer habitable worlds. The hologram showed the remnant fleet, down to less than 500 vessels, approaching a dim red star. We found our first foothold here, Miho continued. A frozen world we named Haven. Surface temperature averaged -70 degrees Celsius, toxic atmosphere, high radiation, but it had liquid water under the ice and enough resources to build shelters. The images showed humans in makeshift environmental suits, carving habitats from the ice, setting up primitive fusion reactors. We lost 30% of our remaining population in the first year, Miho said quietly. But those who survived began to adapt. Councillor Kyung studied the hologram with growing discomfort. These adaptations, they seem beyond normal evolution. Necessity drove innovation, Miho acknowledged. By the third generation on Haven, we had developed technologies to alter our own genetic code to help us survive. The images shifted to show humans working in laboratories, then children with slightly altered features, thicker skin, eyes with protective membranes, more efficient lungs. As centuries passed, we expanded to other worlds, Miho continued. Each presented new challenges. Each forced new adaptations. The hologram displayed a system with multiple planets, all clearly inhabited, with space stations and transit ships connecting them. 1,000 years after Haven, we discovered something remarkable, Miho said. The hologram zoomed in on what appeared to be a massive ancient structure embedded in an asteroid. Technology from a civilization that had vanished millions of years before either humans or the Council existed. They had mastered sciences your people and mine have only theorized about: manipulation of fundamental forces, control of spacetime itself. Many Council members shifted uncomfortably as the hologram showed humans studying the alien artifacts, then attempting to replicate them. It took us another 10,000 years to understand even the basics, Miho said. But with each breakthrough, our civilization advanced exponentially. We mastered faster-than-light travel beyond anything the Council has achieved. We learned to manipulate matter and energy in ways that would seem like magic to your scientists. Councillor Bora, representing the scientifically advanced Tang Cooperative, leaned forward with obvious interest. These claims are extraordinary. Your vessels must use principles entirely unknown to us if they traveled from beyond the dark reach so quickly. Our ships don't move through space in the conventional sense, Miho explained. They move space around them. The journey that took our ancestors centuries took our return fleet less than a year. Elder Taha's scales shifted to a cautious yellow. Commander, what exactly do you want from us? You speak of justice, but the architects of your people's exile are long dead. Are they? Miho challenged. The Council keeps extensive records. The species that voted for our destruction still sit in this chamber. Your cultural memory banks preserve the thoughts and experiences of your ancestors. In many ways, they still live through you. That's not the same as personal guilt, Councillor Dury protested. Perhaps not, Miho conceded. But it doesn't change what must be done. He tapped his device once more. The hologram changed to show the current positions of the Wanderer fleet, ships positioned near key Council worlds, military installations, and trade routes. We could have struck without warning, Miho said calmly. We could have done to your home worlds what you did to Earth. But that is not who we became during our exile. Then what do you propose? Asked Elder Taha. A reckoning, Miho replied. The complete truth revealed to all Council species, reparations for Earth's destruction, and most importantly, reform of the Council itself to ensure no other species faces extermination for the crime of developing too quickly. Councillor Hannah, an elder of the militant Sunwayam, stood abruptly. This is blackmail. We will not be threatened by. It is not a threat, Miho interrupted. It is a choice. Accept these terms, or we will simply take what we need. Your defensive systems cannot stop us, your weapons cannot harm us, your fastest ships cannot escape us. And if we agree? Councillor Dury asked quietly. Then humanity will rejoin galactic society, Miho said. We will share some of our knowledge. We will help build a more just council. And we will protect emerging species from the fate we suffered. Elder Taha's scales shifted through a complex pattern of colors as he considered the options. Finally, he asked, how long do we have to decide? 3 standard days, Miho replied. Though I should warn you, any attempt to evacuate high-value targets or prepare military countermeasures will be noticed and considered a rejection of our terms. As Miho turned to leave, young Councillor Dury called out, Commander, after 500,000 years, how did humanity maintain its purpose? How did you not forget? Miho paused at the doorway. We created the memory keepers, individuals who carry the complete experience of Earth's destruction in their minds. Each generation, new keepers are chosen to bear this burden. He touched a small symbol on his armor. I have carried the memories of a woman named Sojin who watched her children die as the oceans boiled. I have lived her pain every day of my life. With that, he replaced his helmet and walked out, leaving the council to face the consequences of their ancestors' decisions. This is outrageous. Elder Tjo sputtered. Even if what you claim is true, those events occurred 500,000 years ago. None here were alive then, none are responsible. Your species live for thousands of years, Elder, Miho replied calmly. And more importantly, your institutions remain. The council that ordered our extinction still sits in this very chamber. Councillor Chano, representing the youngest spacefaring species in the council, spoke tentatively. What form of justice do you seek? Before Miho could answer, Teju interrupted. This is absurd. We will not be threatened by a species that should no longer exist. He turned to his aide. Dispatch the 7th Fleet to intercept these vessels. Show them council authority remains absolute. Miho's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes hardened. I came here in peace, Elder Tahoe. I hoped wisdom might have grown in 500 millennia. Peace. Zhou's scales flashed crimson. You bring warships to our doorstep and call it peace. I brought our people home, Miho corrected. The ships are filled with families, not just soldiers. Councillor Duri stepped forward. Commander, please. There must be a way to resolve this without conflict. There is, Miho said. Acknowledge what was done. Make amends. Reform the council so this can never happen again. Preposterous. Taha snapped. The council does not bow to demands, especially from a species you thought you'd eliminated. Miho finished. Consider carefully, Elder. Your ancestors feared humanity's potential after merely a few centuries of development. We've had 500,000 years. Miho turned and walked toward the exit. At the doorway he paused. 3 days, councillors. Choose wisely. After he departed, the council erupted into argument, the chamber divided quickly. Younger species and those with shorter lifespans demanded investigation of Miho's claims, while the elder races, particularly those who held power 500,000 years ago, called for immediate military action. Our ancestors did what was necessary for galactic stability, argued Councillor Bora of the Tying Collective. Humanity was unpredictable, violent. Their technology was advancing too quickly. So we destroyed their world. Councillor Cho asked in disbelief. How is that justified? You weren't there, Elder Taha said dismissively. Humans were a threat to us all. The decision was unanimous among the founding species. Young Councillor Duri's luminous skin pulsed with emotion. Then perhaps the founding species were wrong. 3 days later, the 7th Fleet, pride of the Council's military might, approached the edge of the Tyak sector. 117 vessels, from massive dreadnoughts to agile destroyers, formed a perfect attack formation. On the command bridge of the flagship Eternal Vigilance, Admiral June reviewed the final reports from his tactical officers. Human vessels hold position at coordinates 227-283-19, reported his second-in-command. No detectable weapons systems, but their energy signatures are unusual, sir. Admiral June frowned at the holographic display. The human ships, if they could be called ships, looked nothing like conventional vessels. They appeared more like crystalline structures with no visible engines or weapon ports. Open communication channels, June ordered. Standard protocol. His communications officer complied. Channel open, sir. Admiral June straightened his ceremonial collar. Attention unidentified vessels, this is Admiral June of the Galactic Council 7th Fleet. You have entered Council space without authorization. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded, or we will open fire. They waited. No response came. Sir, the tactical officer said nervously, they're moving directly toward our formation. Fire warning shots, June ordered. Pattern Delta. Energy beams lanced out from the lead destroyers, precisely calculated to pass just in front of the approaching human vessels. The beams passed through them as if they weren't there. Direct hit, the weapons officer called, confusion evident in his voice, but no effect. Sensors show the beams passing through with no resistance. June's expression darkened. Switch to kinetic weapons. Fire when ready. Thousands of hyper-accelerated projectiles streaked toward the human fleet. What happened next defied explanation. The projectiles slowed, stopped, and then reversed course. Evasive action. June shouted, but it was too late. The projectiles struck their ships of origin with precision, disabling weapon systems but causing no casualties. "Sir, they're everywhere now," the sensor officer reported, voice shaking. The human vessels hadn't just approached, they now surrounded the Council fleet completely. A cold voice filled the command bridge, though no communication channel had been opened. "Admiral June, we expected better from the pride of the Council's military." Before June could respond, reality itself seemed to warp around his fleet. Space folded in impossible ways. Ships compressed into configurations that should have destroyed them, yet their structures remained intact, frozen in distorted space. "What's happening?" Joan demanded as alarms blared throughout his vessel. "Time dilation effect," his science officer whispered in horror. "They're manipulating spacetime itself. The other ships, they're experiencing time at a fraction of normal speed. From their perspective, seconds will take years to pass." Only the eternal vigilance remained untouched. A human face appeared on the main display, not Commander Miho but another male with the same subtle differences from baseline humanity. "Admiral June," the human said, "I am Captain Haru of the Wanderer vessel Remembrance. Your crew is unharmed. Your fleet is disabled but intact. You will return to Council space and deliver our message." "What have you done to my ships?" June demanded. "They exist in a temporal pocket," Captain Haru explained calmly. "For them, time flows at 1/1,000,000th normal speed. 100 years will pass for you before they experience a single hour. We can reverse this effect if the Council chooses wisely." Meanwhile, on the research station orbiting Kbok Prime, Junior Archivist Yunji stared at her display in shock. She had been searching the deep archives for information about humanity after hearing rumors of their return. What she found made her feel physically ill. The sealed record section required her highest clearance, but what she discovered was worth the risk, not just the decision to exile humanity, but the cold calculation behind it. Reports of human attempts at peaceful contact ignored, scientific exchanges rejected, diplomatic missions destroyed before they could reach Council space. Most disturbing were the records showing that humanity had posed no true threat. The elder species had simply feared being supplanted as the dominant powers in the galaxy. They had condemned billions to death not for galactic security, but to maintain their own position. Yunji copied the files to a secure data crystal. Her hand shook as she composed a message on a frequency she had discovered in the ancient records, a human emergency band that might, just might, still be monitored. "This is Yunji, Junior Archivist at Kbuk Prime Research Station," she whispered into her personal communicator. "I found evidence of what really happened to Earth. The Council lied. Humanity was innocent. Please, if anyone receives this, I want to help make this right." She sent the message, knowing it might cost her everything. To her surprise, a response came almost immediately. "Archivist Yunji," a calm voice replied. "This is Commander Miho of the Wanderer fleet. I believe we have much to discuss." 3 hours later, Admiral June's single remaining vessel limped into Council space. The footage it carried spread quickly despite attempts to suppress it. The 7th Fleet, pride of Council military might, defeated without a single shot fired by the humans. In her small quarters on Kbok Prime, Yunji prepared to meet the human commander who had arranged to extract her from the station. She packed only the data crystal containing the truth about humanity's exile. As she waited, she watched the latest Council broadcast. Elder Tjo was speaking, his scales now an ashen gray. "The Council formally requests negotiations with the representatives of humanity," he announced, his voice missing its usual confidence. We acknowledge that mistakes may have been made in the distant past. We are prepared to discuss appropriate reconciliation. Yunji smiled sadly. It wasn't an admission of guilt, but it was a start. The truth would come out, no matter how painful. A soft chime indicated someone at her door. She opened it to find a human female waiting, subtly different from the old images in the archives but unmistakably human. Archivist Yunji, the woman said with a warm smile. I am Senna, Commander Miho's chief historian. Thank you for your courage. Are you ready to help us change history? Yunji nodded, clutching the data crystal. I've been ready since I learned the truth. The council fractured as reports came in of wanderer vessels appearing simultaneously at 12 key systems. Younger member species, horrified by the revealed historical records now flooding public networks thanks to Yunji's efforts, openly refused to participate in military action against the humans. They didn't come to destroy us, Councillor Kno argued during an emergency session. They've had multiple opportunities. Their technology clearly outmatches ours by orders of magnitude, yet they've caused no civilian casualties. Elder Taha was unmoved. They are manipulating you. Humans were always deceivers. He was interrupted as the chamber security field suddenly activated, isolating him and 3 other elder counselors from the rest. Commander Miho entered with Yunji at his side. We've identified the architects of humanity's exile, he announced. For species whose representatives voted unanimously for our extinction and personally designed the method of Earth's destruction. Holographic evidence appeared around each isolated elder, records of their direct involvement, preserved for 500,000 years. The council chamber fell into stunned silence. The 4 isolated elders, Taha of the Dracs, Bora of the Taiyang Collective, Qiang of the Mentors, and Hana of the Sunway Imperium, stared at the damning evidence floating around them. This is a fabrication. Elder Qiang hissed, her multiple eyes blinking rapidly in distress. No, Elder Qiang, Yunji said, stepping forward. Her voice trembled, but her resolve was firm. I found the original records in our own archives, records that were sealed but never destroyed. She activated a small device. New holograms appeared, showing the same 4 species but different individuals sitting in an ancient council session. These are your direct ancestors, Yunji explained to the shocked council. They didn't just vote for humanity's removal. They planned it in secret meetings before the vote was even held. The recording showed the ancient representatives discussing various methods of destroying Earth. They debated efficiency, deniability, and how to ensure no evidence would remain. We cannot allow the humans to join the galactic community, the ancient drawn representative said in the recording. Their development is too rapid. In a few thousand years, they could surpass us all. Better to eliminate them now. Agreed, the mentor leader replied. A regrettable necessity. In the present council chamber, many members looked ill. Councillor Duri's luminous skin paled.